Which one of these teams was supposed to be the faster team, the more athletic team? Who was it? Wow. Butt-kicking statement game for Notre Dame. It was also, let's not get this wrong, it was a statement game for USC. It was a statement game to say they're not ready. They are not ready. The offense is elite. The offense is explosive, but the offense has to have certain things go right, and the offense is certainly far from perfect. And if you've got a defense that is tough, that's aggressive, that has a great scheme, as Al Golden put together tonight for Notre Dame, Caleb Williams and company can be had. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. Best discussion, debate, and analysis based on your contribution. Notre Dame 48, USC 20. And Notre Dame could have tacked on another touchdown at the end to make it 55-20. Notre Dame crushed USC. Crushed USC. USC was pathetic tonight in just about every way. There were some isolated plays that they made, of course, to score their 20 points. But defensively, they sucked. They were awful. There has been much debate here. And, of course, on our USC channel, join us each and every Monday night, 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific, for the best in USC talk. But whether the previous performances by the defense against the likes of a bad schedule really mattered, because USC had just about all those games in hand at some point. But if you really watched the Arizona State game in particular, even though they won by 2 touchdowns, it was still a game in the fourth quarter, and USC was giving up gobs of yardage. And then we move it to last Saturday's game against Arizona, and that was the one that got me to thinking, you know what? This whole excuse of USC giving up garbage points, garbage yardage, well, it was not garbage against Arizona. They needed every play to get out with a win and to avoid a defeat in triple overtime at the Coliseum. When you go to overtime, you were always within one play of losing, and that was USC, and they were down 17-0, and I thought, okay, this defense is not showing up. This defense should be markedly better than last season's defense, with all the additions on that side of the football from a team that defensively was horrible, horrendous, atrocious in Clay Helton's final season in 21, that put some pieces together to at least make some plays, get some turnovers, be that kind of defense where at least they caused some turnovers in amongst all the yards and points last season. And then all the upgrades in the offseason. Not expecting USC to have an elite defense. No. But expecting USC to have a competent defense. That is still not the case. They are awful on defense, and that's got to be pointed to defensive coordinator Alex Grinch, and that has to be directed toward most responsible, the head coach. He runs the deal. He hires the coaches. Lincoln Riley is failing in this area and failing miserably. This was a poor performance and a season of poor performances, and it finally came against a team that is capable. And who would argue going into this game that Notre Dame had a high-powered offense? And I'm not pretending that Notre Dame scored 48 points on offense. They had a kick return TD. They had a scoop and score touchdown, but their offense pretty much did what it wanted to do and didn't try to be explosive except for taking a few shots downfield, because they grabbed control of this game and then they could play Notre Dame football with Audric Estime in particular, 22 carries for 95 yards. This was a butt kicking from the beginning, pressuring Caleb Williams, making him very uncomfortable, sacking him on occasion. And even when they didn't, they altered the throws. They chased him around. They put him in awkward throwing situations, which, of course, for him, he's accustomed to. He thrives in typically, but usually when he is determining the angles of the throws and he's improvising and he's dictating to the defense what he's going to do, Notre Dame dictated to him. And it started early with the fourth play of the game with the overthrow. Because of the pressure, the overthrow, Caleb saw somebody open, overthrew them, and Xavier Watts started what was a phenomenal night for him with an interception. Fourth play of the game, 12 plays later, or 12 yards later on 3 plays, Audric Estime made it 7-0. Caleb Williams later had a touchdown run in the first 3 possessions of the game that was called back due to a holding call. My goodness. We also had the defensive line for Notre Dame. So they contained the run. They got in Caleb Williams' face. They chased him around. They made it uncomfortable for him. They batted balls at the line. One in particular by Gabriel Cubio led to an interception. Again, Xavier Watts with the pick led to another Estime touchdown. That made it 17-3. Benjamin Morrison had an interception, this time at the 50-yard line. That led to an Audric Estime touchdown to make it 24-3. Howard Cross, number 56, right there in the middle of the Notre Dame defense up front. He was phenomenal. I made a foolish prediction this week because I just thought, man, Notre Dame is so limited on offense. Their offensive line isn't as good as it typically is. It's not a vintage Notre Dame line. It's good. It's still a really good line. Those guys will play on Sundays, most of them. But they don't have any playmakers on the outside. They're not going to be able to. And then Caleb Williams is just so difficult to contain for 4 quarters. And look what happened last year when they played at the Coliseum. That Notre Dame defense last year was really good, chased him around, but he just pulled a rabbit out of the hat constantly against Notre Dame's defense and won by 17. Now, of course, that was against Drew Pine, to a quarterback who gutted it out. And no knock on Drew Pine because he actually played a good game, but was way overmatched in that one. Part of me thought Notre Dame's tougher. Take the defense, take the home field advantage, take the team that's going to ram it down their throats. I believed in Notre Dame being, I don't know, going into it, I stated this a number of times, I didn't really have a good feel for who was the better team, even though you tend to think USC is the better team because they got all the shining toys on the outside with all the receivers and the playmakers. And of course, arguably the best player in the country in Caleb Williams. I get tired of hearing that over and over and over, that he is the best player in the country. He's most likely the best quarterback in the country, but to compare him to other positions, I never liked that. But man, Notre Dame showed they look like the faster team. They look like the more capable team in space. 24-13 game, actually 24-6 at halftime, and the sideline reporter at NBC talked to Lincoln Riley, who said, hey, we're in the right in the middle of it. And I thought, those seem like hollow words, that he's trying to convince his team and convince himself that they're in the middle of it. Not that you can't come back from 18 down, especially in today's game, especially with a prolific offense with all those playmakers. Zachariah Branch early in the game, coming back from injury, he was electric in the open field, and I thought he was going to be, at that point it looked like he was going to be a major factor in this game. But credit Notre Dame. They limited the big plays. He made plays. He converted first downs, but they held him in check, not ripping off 50-yard plays on them. They pursued extremely well. And the Notre Dame defense, the other part of this going into this game that we all talked about here at the Voice of College Football. Hope you're here every week, just constantly every day talking college football with us, because this is the stuff we diagnose each and every day with you and have a fun time analyzing the sport. Best discussion, debate, and analysis is that just think about psychologically and emotionally getting off the deck over and over and over and over. Ohio State goes into Notre Dame and they rip their hearts out of their chests, 17-14 on the final play. Then Notre Dame goes to Duke. People laugh at Duke. Duke's not a football school. Forget that crap. Duke is a really good football team. They've got a backup quarterback playing tonight. I believe Riley Leonard could not make it, and they're tearing up North Carolina State. They're a good football team. That game went down to the wire. Sam Hartman had to pull out a 4th and 16 play. So Notre Dame wins an emotionally difficult game. Primetime, national audience, everybody watching. The next week, Louisville. Well, we saw what a letdown was tonight with Louisville going to Pitt, didn't we? But on that night, Saturday night, 1 week ago, we saw Jahar Jordan and company, and that Louisville defense really put it on Notre Dame, and really Notre Dame wear down in the fourth quarter, thinking this is a 3rd consecutive week they've had to play at a high level against a top 5 to 15 team in the country. So my question was, you can only ask these guys to do so much. It's been said many times that a team can only reach that fever pitch of intensity about 4 times a year. Well, they've had to do it 4 consecutive weeks, and maybe they didn't last week. That's the reason they lost to Louisville. But the home crowd, and you got to hand it to Marcus Freeman, his coaching staff, for the scheme and being able to challenge the players, work them through, get them off the deck, lift their spirits, inspire them, and they were ready to play. My goodness, Sam Hartman, I've got my second half notes here. He missed a throw on third down that caused a punt. I thought things might get interesting there because then that was the series in which, and also we want to credit Kalen Bullock, the defensive back for USC. He's an exceptional player. He's only going to get better. Look at how he can track guys down in space and bring them to the turf. Marshawn Lloyd had his one impact play on the option play, scooted to the end zone for the touchdown to make it 24-13, but only 8 carries, 46 yards for Lloyd. They needed to get into a position where they were in front and could pound him against that Notre Dame defense. Didn't happen. Consider USC was missing Max Williams. He had left the game early, the safety, and his backup, Bryson Shaw, who plays a ton of time, so he's not just a strictly backup, but he went into the tent sometime, I believe, in the second half. And then Sam Hartman. Jason Garrett said it during the broadcast. I was a bit surprised that he took it to this extreme because I've been saying for 4 years that Sam Hartman is one of the best long ball throwers in all of college football. He worked with those receivers at Wake Forest to put up massive amounts of yardage, and the deep throw is one that Sam Hartman can hit probably better than anyone on a regular basis. But Garrett said he's the best he's ever seen at the college level. That doesn't mean he's got the best arm, but he places it in the bucket, and he certainly did on not necessarily a lofting bomb, but he had to drill it pretty well, kind of somewhere between the bomb throw and the laser shot with a bit of trajectory as Chris Tyree just abused the defensive back on that play across the middle, and that broke the game open at 31-13, and that's when you got an idea, okay, this may not be USC's night. Don't know if they're going to come back from that. Benjamin Morris, talk about comebacks. He came back off the injured list, had a nice pass breakup in the end zone against Brendan Rice. Rice did come back and catch a touchdown a few plays later, but just noting Benjamin Morrison and his impact with Notre Dame on this night. Caleb showed his wizardry, still had a reasonably good game by some people's standards, but the 3 picks really did them in, threw the touchdown to Rice. So it was 31-20 at that point, but boom, 31-20. And when this happens, this has to take the life out of a football team that's struggling and struggling and struggling to come back and complete the comeback, that you get it within 11. Kickoff, Jadarian Price goes the distance for the touchdown. Let's keep in mind, USC does not have a special teams coordinator, and they struggle in special teams. They struggled last year. They basically blew a Cotton Bowl game against Tulane because of special teams blunders. They do not have a special teams coordinator. Lincoln Riley is questioned about that from time to time, and he says they can handle it. Okay. Xavier Watts with a scoop and score, just to complete an amazing night for him. I would love to get the name of the player that knocked the ball. I forgot to take note of that, but that was just an exceptional textbook play with the throw out to, I believe, Rice, or it might have been Mario Williams. I believe it was Mario Williams, and the defensive back on him, the corner, just came up and just stripped him. Ball bounced on the turf. Scoop and score for Watts, 48-20. Then the Irish come back 2 plays later on defense, and they're still intense and still, even though the game was over, and they rip it away from USC again, and they could have probably taken it in, but they took a knee. And Mario Cristobal, they took a knee. 55-20. It could have been, no. 48-20. That's your final score. Notre Dame wins. The Irish on defense, 6 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, and 5 passes defensed. Maybe the season's over for Notre Dame. No team has made the playoff with 2 losses. This is not 2024 when you can have a worse record with 12 teams in the playoff. And of course, USC loses for the first time. They're still in it, but they're going to have to get so much better to compete with what we saw at 3:30 Eastern, Oregon, Washington, and with what Oregon State is doing tonight to a good UCLA team right now as it stands, up by 12, game not over. So many good teams in the Pac-12, and USC just seems like they're just kind of one of them and not at the top, somewhere maybe 4 or 5 if they don't get things corrected. And these things aren't necessarily correctable. They're not quick fixes, let's put it that way. So USC falls to Notre Dame. The Irish, hey, for all the people out there that say Notre Dame sucks, no, they don't suck. They lost 2 tough games. Yeah, and they played a bad fourth quarter against Louisville. They did. But they took one of the 5 best teams in the country to the final play. Also, they beat a good Duke team, and they obliterated an extremely talented USC team that I would still consider to be one of the 15 best teams in America. Catch my top 25 that actually makes sense. Catch the call-in show on Saturday night. Every Saturday night, we get together and take your calls on college football after the primetime games right here at the Voice of College Football.